Dear ones, dearest ones, yesterday was April Fool's Day. I'll admit right off the bat that while I've never really been a fan, much less a practitioner, I'm even less of one these days. Don't get me wrong, I admire well-conceived April Fool's Day trickery, though the bar for me is set quite high, as the less inventive pranks that I've witnessed are merely poorly disguised cruelty sometimes, and they frequently are followed by an affronted response on the part of the trickster. Don't get mad, dude, it's just a joke. Perhaps I just don't understand the joy in making people feel stupid. But as I said, I'm even less a fan these days, and it took a friend to help me identify the reason why. Reality is wild enough these days. Driving down the road the other day, listening to a book on loss of focus, I tried to answer my phone, and I managed to look down long enough to run my mirror into a pole sticking out into the road. On the one hand, a particular circumstance of irony, asked to think about focus, I lose focus for 2 seconds and I break a mirror. On the other hand, I get that this may not be peculiar to me, at least in these times, that what I have been feeling in the past several weeks and months has a universal quality to it. And if I'm wrong, apologies. We got our church in prelude, so they say we always preach the sermon we need to hear. And yet, what I have begun to feel is this unmooredness, this untethering, this floating feeling as though all I used to be able to count on to ground me has somehow become disconnected. I am distracted, I am tired, I am unfocused, I am forgetful. I have less energy for the things that used to give me energy. I have become hyper-focused on single projects, prone to the magical thinking that whispers to me that by seeing this one thing through, I might unlock whatever it is that has been holding me back from feeling whole and present, here, now. James Baldwin said, and this is a refrain that you will hear throughout this sermon because that's how it is. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. The reason I sense I am not alone is that I have been reading books and listening to podcasts and running my mirrors into poles as a result of it, and reading articles that speak to this same phenomenon. What I don't know is whether I am gravitating toward these books and podcasts because I share an affinity for their perspective, or whether the abundance of these books and podcasts and articles is indicative of some greater cultural zeitgeist in which we all find ourselves. Perhaps you can tell me after our service today where you sit with all of this. I so want to know how things are with you. I want to know because if there's something larger afoot, it is only in unburdening ourselves to one another that we might understand we are not alone in our experience. And because there is an essential loneliness that is the hallmark of these times, if we can share through unburdening, we might locate powerful mirrors of understanding and connecting to one another's experiences of life in these days. I want to know because I am profoundly yearning to heal this hurt. I am profoundly yearning to be in this deep kind of relationship. And I want to know because my prayer is that these discussions and connections and understandings of each other's experiences provide an antidote to the something that I sense is ailing us. I should say, is ailing me and the writers and producers of these books and podcasts and articles that I alluded to earlier. One such writer is Catherine May, whose newest book, Enchantment: Awakening Wonder in an Anxious Age, discusses her own challenges in staying focused and staying grounded in a world that seems to her to be increasingly hostile to focus and groundedness and wonder. The world she encounters both inside her house and outside in the broader world seems to have become hostile to how our brains have been wired through millions of years of evolution. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. She suggests that an antidote to this state of things may be found by reconnecting to awe and wonder and enchantment in everyday things. She references a term coined by Romanian historian of religion Mircea Eliade, hierophany, breakthroughs of the sacred into the everyday world. From the Greek sacred, attached to reveal or bring light, bringing the sacred out into being revealed. Eliade's academic work returned to this concept frequently, using it to describe a world in which our decision to offer reverence or attention to an object or a place or a person or an experience turned that into something sacred. This transformation was not an act of prestidigitation or magical thinking or superstition. It was the experience of perceiving at once all the layers of existence, not just something of the surface experience, of surface appearance. All things carry within them sacred experience. And to live oriented toward hierophany is to live in an enhanced world in which we are able to see the wonder in the everyday. An orientation like that makes it possible for all of nature to reveal itself as sacred. In his words, the cosmos itself can become a hierophany. But Eliade was writing in 1957. And even then, the world he looked out on was one he sensed had lost its hierophanies. Things had become flattened, he said, ordinary. No object capable of possessing meaning deeper than its surface appearance. No experience, no place complicated or enlivened by layers of meaning and understanding, layers of voices and laughter. In 1957, Eliade believed our world had become one that was no longer capable of invoking the sacred in all things. Meaning had seeped away, replacing the profound with nothing but the demands of productivity and capitalist efficiency and cynicism and disconnection and dis-ease. Without hierophany, we lacked the essential tool we need to congregate as spiritual communities. We lack the tool we need to wake up to wonder. But if we are living in a world that is bereft of hierophany, we are living in a world of perpetual yearning. Our bodies are yearning for the thing they cannot find, and we seek and we seek and we look for solutions. But because we're human, we can't help but retain an urge to sanctify certain parts of our lives. Something lives within us that begs us to give places and things and objects and experiences magical meaning, to make them into hallowed ground. It is such a beautiful concept. We are drawn through our very evolution as beings to be people who see the sacred in all things. It's a different way of knowing, and it lives in our bodies instead of our heads. So that the further we get into our heads as we seek to understand our world, the further we get from an embodied sense of wonder. Like Catherine May, I too am drawn to enchantment as an antidote to our halved and quartered and secular and cynical and lost and lonely world. This form of enchantment also lives in our bodies and not in our heads. She describes taking comfort in Eliade's vision of our ancestors walking through a landscape that was in itself a hierophany, seeing depths of significance in everything they touched, the possession of a radically different way of knowing that was necessarily more complex than our current habits of thought. The question is, have we developed into a world in which sustained and deep connection to the world and each other, to focusing on anything long enough to give us a chance to address it, is in fact countercultural? If so, then choosing to own up to it with direct, unvarnished honesty is in fact an act of resistance. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And that enchantment that I'm talking about, that's just on an individual level. What can we each do in our individual lives to control the speed and division and the rubble and the rot? What can we do in individual lives to counter any attendant shame that seems likely to emerge if we choose to buy into the speed trap? The shame that suggests that if we're failing to keep up or stay focused or grounded or maintain what might have once been our baseline level of efficiency or connection, that we're somehow failing at the level of basics of human life as it ought to be lived right now. Personal devotion to the spiritual practices of enchantment and wonder and gratitude are wonderful. But the true act of resistance is to recognize that if we're feeling this, if I'm feeling this, that others are likely feeling something similar. And if that's the case, then what we're dealing with is something systemic, something that cannot be solved by individual practices, by each of us acknowledging to one another our own level of burnout or fear or anxiety or disconnectedness and working to discover what we might do to address this societally. Systemic problems require us to take collective responsibility that we might address the deeper factors that underlie our experiences, that we might come together to make change possible. That is what it looks like to resist in our modern world. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We have within us the capacity to understand that there is something rotten in the state of much more than Denmark. And if we are able to locate and name that, then we are also capable of producing the power to push back against it, because our yearning for something more meaningful is in our essence as human beings. If we are struggling against something within our world that is incompatible with human joy, then it is incumbent upon us to reclaim those elements that provide the fertile ground for sustained soul growth. If we see the rot, it is up to us to address it. In his book, Stolen Focus, which was incidentally the book I was listening to in the car, writer Johann Hari describes a recent visit to the Louvre, where he witnessed people interacting with what is arguably its most famous painting. He describes a rugby scrum of people pushing and jostling to get near it and then quickly turning their backs and taking a selfie. Their own 21st century smile next to what's been described as the most enigmatic smile in history. Hari writes, "On the day I was there, I watched the crowd from the side for more than an hour. Nobody, not one person, looked at the Mona Lisa for more than a few seconds. Her smile no longer seems an enigma. It appears," he says, "as though she is looking at us from her perch in 16th century Italy and asking us, 'Why won't you just look at me like you used to? Why won't you just look at me like you used to?' I wonder how many other things in our lives are asking us the same question. A question we are too distracted or confused or disoriented to even hear, much less answer. The question asked by daffodils and pinkeltinks and osprey and constellations and cairns and cliff faces and other humans in the day-to-day interactions of our lives. Why won't you just look at me like you used to?" I think what's interesting about where we find ourselves right now is that some of the symptoms that I've been describing in myself, a general burnout, brain tired, brain fog, tiredness, a loss of focus or energy, are the symptoms that some people experience when they have contracted COVID. And yet, even if we haven't personally contracted COVID, or even if those symptoms aren't the ones we experienced as a consequence of having it, they still seem to have become pervasive. We're experiencing symptoms, radical shifts in our interactions with ourselves, one another, and the world that seem not to be directly caused by the catalyst that science would have looked to as the cause. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Alexis Pauline Gumbs, who I use as our prayer today, noted the extraordinary way in which Harriet Tubman lived her life and named her truths about a world that was itself incompatible with her very existence. Within the historical reality and villainy of the enslavement of human beings, she said explicitly, "My people are free." Not, "My people should be free." Not, "My people can be free." Not, "Let my people go." My people are free. She knew it to be true, and she lived her life within that truth. And what Alexis Pauline Gumbs concludes from that statement is that we have access to more than just the power of our individual lives, more than just the power of what linear facts make up our day. We actually have access to every act of incredible power that people have used throughout history to do things that are miraculous. Harriet Tubman believed in her freedom more than she believed in the structures that were incompatible with her freedom. She asked, "What is the life and what are the communities in alignment with the freedom I believe in?" She was engaged in generating a community that's actually based on the care it takes to be free. Resistance is a very head-oriented thing, which makes it somewhat paradoxical, but I would suggest to you that this profoundly non-intellectual thing, enchantment, would be an act of resistance. It's not the point. Resistance isn't the point. The enchantment is the point. And resistance is the unintentional consequence of going against a society that suggests to you that you ought to set enchantment aside in favor of doing something that is head-oriented resistance rather than heart-oriented resistance. What Harriet Tubman was saying when she said, "My people are free," was a statement of resistance, but it was a heart statement of enchantment. It was a heart statement, not a head statement. It was an awareness that freedom, full, comprehensive, universal, global, unfettered, fully empowered freedom is a means of living one's enchantment with our world. It is a prerequisite to embodying our enchantment. When she said, "My people are free," she said that with her heart. And it was a statement of ultimate resistance, found only in the heart and in the soul. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We are living in a time that is incompatible with our own freedom, freedom from exploitation and expectation, freedom to decide how and when and where to devote our life-giving energies, freedom to be enchanted instead of driven. Individual enchantment can't get us there. It can't be the response, or at least the only response to the hurt as we currently experience those hurts. We don't get there unless we can somehow collectivize our enchantment experience and pay attention to each other and our world and its artifacts, its hierophanies, and our lives in profoundly real ways. May we learn to channel this awareness that there is something afoot today that is inherently incompatible with our collective joy. May we, in becoming aware, also become bold enough to share that awareness with one another. And may we, through this act of sharing, begin to develop the strength and resilience to dismantle it. May this become our greatest act of resistance, heart resistance, our greatest gift to the world yet to be. May it be so. May we make it so. Amen.